Welcome to Impact Makers Radio, featuring industry thought leaders sharing problem-solving insights to help grow your business and live the life you love. And here's your host, Stewart Andrew Alexander.
Hi, and welcome to another Let's Talk Divorce conversation. And on this segment of the show, I have family law attorney Laurie Nelson calling in all the way from Waverly in Iowa. Now, Laurie, who's considered to be an authority in the area of family law, will be talking to you today about a very interesting topic. Laura's going to be addressing the topic of divorce in the context of an abusive relationship. Now that sounds very interesting. So if you are one of the many divorcing couples in Waverly, Iowa, you might want to stop what you're doing for a while, log out of Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or anything else you happen to be doing. Pick up a notepad and pen and get ready to take some notes as we listen in to what Laurie has to share with us today. So with that said, let's not keep her waiting any longer. Welcome to the show, Laurie.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
You are so welcome. We're happy to have you here with us too. So Laurie, in your own words, can you briefly describe what kinds of people you serve and the various types of situations they find themselves in when they come to you for your help?
Sure. When people come to me, they're often at a very low point in their lives. They are finding themselves suddenly faced with something they never anticipated, on the happy day they got married or when they decided to have a child with another person. It being a small town, they are often people that I know as well. And as far as the situations they find themselves in, many of them are coming and they're looking for advice as far as how do I protect myself, how do I protect my assets, how do I set myself up best in case this goes to court. And they usually just have a lot of questions because this is not something that people think about until it happens. And there's a lot of educating that needs to be done as far as the lingo. There's so many what we call street lawyers out there that will give them advice that is just not necessarily on point or really helpful. So they have a lot of questions, especially about what is going to happen with my children.
Keeping in mind that anything you share with us today, Laurie, is not legal advice or legal assistance. And I'm pretty sure that during the many years you've been working as a family law attorney that you've come across many common misconceptions out there. However, because of time constraints, we only have time for you to share just one of the most common misconceptions that you come across while you're out there helping the people who you love to help the most. So if you could share that with us, Laurie, that would be great. Thank you.
The most common misconception I find is that sometimes people are advised that they need to really get a bulldog or a cutthroat, very tough lawyer in order to attempt to wring the most that they can out of their estranged spouse. And I have a couple different views on that. The first is that is not necessarily the best way to go. Just like they say that sometimes dogs look like their owners, I often tell my clients it seems like that clients will also find a lawyer that is more like them. And I tend to find that my clients tend to be those who are looking to resolve things, looking for a reasonable solution. And often if they are coming from a situation where they have been involved in some kind of physical, emotional, financial abuse, then the other party is going to find someone they consider to be a very tough lawyer. That does not always work out the best for that person. because judges don't particularly care for some of those antics that those lawyers perform in their courtroom.
Right, so based on what you just shared with us then, Laurie, and obviously keeping your client's confidentiality in mind, can you share an example of how you've helped someone who came to you with those challenges you just described, or that misconception, and what kind of transformational results you were able to gain for them?
Sure. Well, I pride myself on doing very careful work, and I can thank two of my mentors for that. I'm on my own. I don't have a big office or an assistant. And one of the benefits of that is that I lay my hands on every single piece of evidence, correspondence that comes to me for every case. So, for example, I had a dissolution recently in which I was going up against an attorney with quite a reputation from a large town near us. And she charges significantly more than I am, and she had tried to make things quite difficult leading up to the trial. And I also felt had given her client some rather unreasonable expectations as far as what she would be able to get for him. When we got to trial, I noticed that her assistant was with her that day. And that means a couple of things. It means that her client is paying for that assistant to be there in the courtroom all day. And I also noticed that the assistant was handing things up to the attorney and explaining them. And what that tells me is, unlike me, that attorney has not had her hands and her eyes on every single piece of paper that has gone by and doesn't have all that information in her mind. And that's a real disadvantage. So I was able to get my client a quite nice result, what we felt was a fair result, without all the added expense and without, a lot of the hassle.
Now, as a reminder, today's topic is divorce in the context of an abusive relationship. So with that in mind, Laurie, and for those divorcing couples who are wanting to know more, what's the most common but unknown pitfall that you'd like them to be aware of, regardless of what situation they find themselves in?
The most common pitfall. When you've been in an abusive relationship, and I definitely include emotional and mental abuse in that, because that almost comes more into play when you're dealing with a divorce. You're dealing with someone who is used to manipulating, and they're used to sending things out to you that they want a response from. They want an emotional response. And this goes along with advice you'll hear a lot of times from attorneys, which is if they go low, you go high. You are not the one who behaves badly. You don't send nasty text. You don't, put all your business out on Facebook. You don't talk to the children about this. But the number one pitfall that people will have is even when they're out of the house and even when they're estranged from this abusive partner, they will still be locked in that cycle of abuse because that person will send something out to hurt you, and you will respond. So my advice to get out of that pitfall and to avoid that is to change the game. And the way you change a game with a person like that is that you stop playing. You only deal with them through written correspondence, whether that be text or email. That way you always have that evidence of what is going on. And in a lot of cases, that'll make someone behave better. You don't talk to them on the phone, and you don't talk to them in person, because there's too much likelihood they will get an emotional, charged response from you. And that's exactly what they want. And that will also halt your recovery.
You go high, I go low, people who are trying to be manipulative. Is there ever really a winner in the situation of a divorce, Laurie?
Oh, that is an excellent question. I don't really believe that it's necessarily about winning or losing. Attorneys often say that if both parties leave a little disappointed, then it was probably fair, because that means that both got a little of what they wanted, and neither got everything they wanted. Now, we usually say that in context of a civil suit. When children are involved, I don't want to be quite so passé about it. But if you can get through a divorce, especially from an abusive partner, and you can learn to deal with that person with distance so that they are not pushing your emotional buttons, and you get through that divorce and come out still your own person, and maybe even learn something about yourself and your own strength, then you're a winner.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing that with us, Laurie. So let me ask you something on a more of a personal level then, Laurie. How long have you been a family law attorney?
I have been a family law attorney only 3 years now. I was a school teacher. I taught orchestra in the public schools for 17 years, and then went to law school, and then went out on my own.
When Laurie wakes up on a morning, and maybe it's a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, it doesn't really matter what day of the week, and Laurie has a full day ahead of helping people who find themselves in that unfortunate position of being divorced. How does Laurie feel about that day ahead? Is this something that she's still really passionate about?
Yes, it is. And it's because I have gone through such a situation myself. I also have had the, positive feedback from people, including friends that I have helped through their own situation like this. And as I said before, I take great pride in doing very careful work and being the one person that puts my hands, my eyes on every piece of information in that case. And it's very rewarding work. It's very mentally challenging work. And, the best case is one where you don't actually have to go to trial. If you can get something settled and spare everyone that emotional event and all of the expense, that's always my first goal. But you prepare for settlement and you prepare for trial at the same time. But yes, I still find it very rewarding.
Excellent. I like to ask that question because it just gives a little bit of insight into the more humane side of a lawyer. Because the general perception out there is they're very cold, very distant. So it's great for the listener just to be able to get to know you a little bit more on a personal level. So far we know that you've been a teacher for 17 years. You're obviously now a family lawyer, and you have a very hands-on approach to helping the people who you help the most. So in terms of your background and your education and your experience as it relates to the topic of family law, if you could just share a few moments just going over a little bit of information about that so that the listener gets to know more about that side of Laurie, please. Thank you.
Well, as I mentioned, I was a teacher in the public schools for 17 years, dealing with children all the way from 4th grade through seniors. That taught me a lot about many different personalities and appreciating those personalities. Because when you're a teacher, you're sort of charged to care for all of those children, and you really do learn to do so. I like to bring that same human touch to my lawyering. I have degrees in music education, a bachelor's and a master's. I have a certificate in educational administration. And then, of course, my law degree from Hamline University in St. Paul, Minnesota. I think being a non-traditional student was also an interesting part of my background and kind of a boon in that my law school class was also made up of adults who had a great variety of life experiences and came from many different industries, as opposed to if I had gone to law school right out of college. So I think that was a very valuable experience and really broadened my view of the world and broadened my general knowledge.
So, Laurie, I'd like you, if you could, to picture the kinds of divorcing couples who come to you for your help, and they are wanting to know more about divorce in the context of an abusive relationship. Now, with that picture in mind, what final thoughts would you like to share with them before we close out today with our last question?
If I were advising someone that came to me and what they were telling me sounded like they might be in an abusive relationship that they were trying to get out of, I would advise them to do whatever they could to get a lawyer. It can be very tempting for someone who has been abused to give up. They're so used to losing to this person. They're so used to giving in order to get by, because that is a survival skill they have learned. They need a strong advocate for them that will keep them going, that will buffer them from some of the attacks that will come. And they need to give up their pride and talk to friends, family. There are companies now that will give loans for legal actions. This is the time to invest in this legal process. Once these things are decided, the very first decree, it's very important, because after that, there are certain hurdles that you have to leap in order to be able to change things. So people should not go into it thinking, oh, I'll change it later. The odds that you will get a change later are slim. So you need to invest and do it right the first time.
There's some really great insights that you shared with us today, Laurie, but unfortunately we are running out of time. So if there is somebody out there who wants to know more about divorce in the context of an abusive relationship, where would they reach you? How could they contact you, Laurie?
The easiest way for them to contact me would be via my email, and it is Laurie, Lori, at llnlaw.com.
Fantastic. So that's it for today, ladies and gentlemen. Whether you're sat in heavy traffic, I do hope that's not the case, because that certainly isn't fun, or maybe you're out shopping or out for a walk and you're listening in on your personal device. Whatever the case may be, that was family law attorney Laurie Nelson. Thank you so much for sharing so generously with us today, Laurie. You have certainly demonstrated that you are a true educator and advocate for your client's success. So thank you so much, Laurie.
It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
You are so welcome. And more importantly, I'd like to say a big thank you to you, the listener, for joining us on this very insightful and informative discussion with one of the top family law attorneys in Waverly, Iowa. Again, her name was Laurie Nelson. Make sure you check her out. Send her that email. I'm sure you're going to be in a great place to get started. So again, I'm Stewart Andrew Alexander, and we'll be back shortly with some more leading divorce professionals in this, our series of Let's Talk Divorce Conversations. So until then, take care, have a great day, and we'll talk real soon.
Thank you for tuning in to Impact Makers Radio. To listen to all past, present and future industry thought leaders and trendsetters, visit us at impactmakersradio.com.